مستر مارك جو CTO EMEA جيجامون. اتفضل. يا ريت نحييه. For delivering deep observability in a hybrid cloud world.
Salam alaikum. I'd first like to thank Dr. Sharif, Assistant Minister Kish, and Jyoti from IDC for really setting the scene perfectly for what I'm about to cover in the next 20 minutes. What I'd like to talk to you today is about why we see the power of something we call deep observability in the hybrid cloud as being instrumental to helping you accelerate your digital transformations, stay secure, get the visibility that you need to protect against the threats that we've eloquently had described earlier today, and really make an impact in your organization. So before I start, I want to take us backwards before we move forwards and actually look at what we created as an organization. So when you take time to look at the sheer extent of the innovation and technology across our various domains that we've accomplished in the last 20 years, it's actually astonishing. We did all this. We did all this in compute, in storage, in networks, in IoT and mobile. And outside these paradigms and performance shifts, new threats emerged, new markets were created, consumers demanded more, and they demanded it now, and expectations rose. But it's clear, though, that those solutions have become more distributed, decentralized, with mobiles, wearables, OT, private clouds, public clouds, multiple data centers. So data's everywhere, and it needs to be connected. One thing that connects all these environments and enables the sharing is the network. It's the backbone that holds all these things together. I remember many years ago, I worked for a small database company called Oracle. It was when I joined it. And Larry Ellison stood up at a conference and said, the network will become the computer. And the network, to an extent, has enabled all the things that we see today. So pretty much everything that we do today traverses a network somewhere. It's lived up to its promise of really being the information superhighway. And unlike our motorways that are governed by speed limits and cameras, it's only really governed by physics. And in the past 20 years, networks have gone 1 gig, 10 gig, 25, 40, 100, where's it going to go? So as someone from a company whose business is delivering network visibility, I guess I'd say that, wouldn't I? But I hope in the next few minutes with you, I'll give you the opportunity to see why network visibility and the deep observability that Gigamon provides is pivotal in helping you protect your environments in a hybrid world. So I'm not going to go over the imperatives of digital transformation. They're pretty clear, they're pretty self-evident. And you've already heard from some of the speakers that we've heard earlier that there are headwinds to that transformation. You know, the cyber threat landscape now is as hostile as it's ever been. I think Dr. Sharif said $15 trillion by 2028, $10 trillion by the end of this year. To put that into context, that's the third biggest economy on the planet, to really set how important that is. You're obviously clearly facing aggressive regulatory and compliance requirements, both national and international, and you need to see where that data is at all times, particularly that data sovereignty in cloud environments is critical. And again, costs are increasing, not least of which because in order to manage this complex environment, you've got tools and technologies everywhere in the environment. And the economic uncertainty still prevails. And when I talk about economic uncertainty, I'm not talking about Ukraine, although clearly that created some instability and will continue to do so. I'm talking actually about the emerging threat when we look at Taiwan and China. When you look at the potential for disrupting the supply chain for semiconductors, I think there's further economic instability ahead, and you need to be prepared and ready for that. So the pressure and risk of you failing in your transformation is as high as ever. One of the things that you did in order to address the risks, to optimize costs, to secure your transformations, and to help you become more competitive in terms of competing against those headwinds, is you invested in various different tools observability tools to cover cyber, compliance, cost management, performance management. And this drove these myriad observability solutions. And so when we say observability, we're really talking about several different things and categories of tools. We're dealing with SIEM, NDR, APM, NPM, network performance management. And these various tools clearly are effective today in helping you see inside your applications, your data, your services, assisting you in making informed decisions on performance, service quality, and security. The reality of it is the tools today are very powerful, but predominantly they rely on what we call MELT, which is metrics, events, logs, and traces. And there are some real advantages in using those sources of information to help you make the decisions you need to, but there are also some significant disadvantages which we believe contribute to the need for what we call deep observability. There are 4 areas that we see these tools particularly struggling to cope with. Firstly, the growing volumes of data and traffic being generated, and the network performance increases the workloads on those tools. They're becoming overloaded with the data that these high-performance networks are throwing at them. To make matters worse, many companies, to cope with this data volume deluge, have created multiple instances of different tools on different platforms, and also to cover public cloud platforms from different vendors, you're using different tools to do the same thing in different places. That spirals costs. In fact, the majority of environments that you have, also the observability tools are not as effective in helping identify the risks from east-west traffic attacks and lateral movement, which increasingly are being used by organizations, and the advanced persistent threats perpetrated by nation states are almost entirely using lateral movement. So if these tools can't give you that east-west visibility, then you have blind spots in your environment that you probably don't realize you have today. And finally, most of those tools can't handle encrypted data anywhere near as easily as data that's in the clear. And we believe some of those tools, it's 5 times less effective in terms of handling that data. Now that's okay, but when you look at where most of the threats sit today, they're hiding in encrypted data. 85% of all internet traffic is allegedly encrypted, and increasing numbers of application workloads are using encrypted traffic. So if you can't see what's in it, then you can't protect against it. And so we're able to provide solutions for that. So what is deep observability? So put simply, deep observability is about harnessing the power of network-level intelligence, in effect, packets, to increase the power and effectiveness of your existing tools, and at the same time reducing and improving your security posture in your organization. And perhaps most importantly, deep observability provided by the organization I represent enables you to do that across your entire hybrid estate: private cloud, public cloud, containers, data center. When we go deeper, what we're really talking about is at the network or traffic level, is looking at the actual packets that are in transit. And we get much greater clarity and accuracy of what's going on by looking at the packet. And what's more, the network itself is outside the traditional blast radius of most attacks. It's not a file, it's not a log, it's not a metrics. And as I mentioned earlier on, advanced persistent threat actors are spending time dwelling. We heard this from Dr. Sharif, dwelling for, reduced it down to 20 days in networks. They're able to identify logs, they copy them, they manipulate them, they bide their time, then they overplay that log as if it were a live log. Meanwhile, they're exfiltrating data from your organization. So the log is mutable. It's not always a true and fair reflection of what's happening from a security context in your organization. The network, however, doesn't lie, and the data is in the network. So what do we do? And where this is actually quite a complex diagram is, remember when we started our session, we talked about the network connecting all those environments. In essence, Gigamon and our technology captures the packets from the network, be they physical or virtually generated, from containers, from physical servers, from public and private clouds. And once we have that traffic, it will be collected and aggregated from those networks. And we can, if required, we can decrypt that traffic and send it in the clear to particular tools which may not be equipped to deal with encrypted traffic, helps those tools be more effective, remembering that more threats are now hiding in that data. Additionally, we can just select specific sections of packets or headers or groups of packets to send on to tools to help them to be more effective, reducing the data volumes that they receive, and in some cases where that data that we send contains sensitive information, personally identifiable information, credit card numbers, passport numbers, the GigaMon technology can also at speed mask that data so tools don't see information which is private to the individual. They just see the data they need when they need it in the right format. So they can spend their CPU cycles doing what they're good at. We can also apply deduplication and eliminate packets that are already sent or seen. As you can imagine, there are usually large numbers of retries in an environment, and because we're tapping the environment in different places, you often see the same packet 2 or 3 or 4 times. Well, without a solution like GigaMon, tools easily get flooded and have to cope and handle with lots of duplicate packet traffic. And for those tools that rely on specific application information, we can filter and direct flows of applications just to the specific tools that need email or particular applications to be sent to them, as well as filtering out specific application metadata for specific applications, be those business applications, be those network applications, etc. So your tools are spending time on richer, high-fidelity data and not wasting time being flooded by high volumes and having to dedicate CPU to filtering. This is a very detailed diagram. I'm not going to dwell on this in too much detail, but this demonstrates how we're able to do this, not just on physical platforms, but in every one of the mainstream cloud platforms, from AWS, Azure. We can do this for OpenStack, and we'll be doing OpenShift, VMware, and hyperconverged environments. So there's no single part of your environment, be that physical, virtual, private, public, or container, where we can't get access to that traffic, to be able to decrypt it, filter it, enrich it, and make your tools move from being good tools to great tools. So what we're really talking about from a GigaMon perspective is getting you access to the data, enabling you to enrich that data, transform it, and then make your tools more efficient. Perhaps as importantly, though, when it comes to teams and skills, with the deep observability and the insight that we provide, bridging both melt, metrics, event logs, and trace data, and the data that comes from GigaMon in terms of network traffic, we're able to bring all the teams together in your organization around a single consistent view of that data, which in turn makes them more efficient, it makes them more productive. And particularly where skills are a very demanding asset in today's world, aligning those single teams around that single source of truth helps you harness all the resources to spot threats quickly and rapidly and come up with a cohesive response, rather than individual teams working in isolation and perhaps not sharing information and missing an essential threat. The important thing to mention, though, is what we're not saying is network visibility, deep observability data is better than metric, event, log, and trace data. You absolutely have to have both in your organization. You do need both working together, because only when you can do that will you fully eliminate the blind spots that you have. And remember, you cannot protect against what you can't see. So that's why we believe that deeper level of observability is so critical, to give you that complete picture in terms of what's happening in your organization and to be able to deal with it and to manage it. Some quick examples of when we're connected with other tools, what we're able to do. We're easily able to identify suspicious activity, ciphers which are weaker. In the cases where we integrate with SIEM tools, we can identify by using our decryption capability what's exactly in a packet and then correlate that with a protocol that we believe that's using. And quite often, bad actors are hiding effective malware in encrypted data. So we can correlate whether or not traffic coming from, for example, port 443 in HTTPS is actually really 443 traffic. We can only do that by seeing inside that packet, and that's what Gigamon provides you. So we can see whether or not that is really the traffic it purports to be, and enable the tools to do that. Before I wrap up, I'd also like to talk a little bit about Zero Trust. Now, in Europe at the moment, and especially in public sector, finance and critical infrastructure sectors, organizations are starting to aggressively target Zero Trust adoption. Okay? And so another factor to consider is the extent to which a Zero Trust architecture is really essential in having that network visibility. In fact, Gigamon recently sponsored a white paper by a gentleman called John Kindervag, who some will know as the creator of the Zero Trust architecture and approach. And he believes, as do we, that having network level visibility in the way that we provide it is pivotal to enabling you to build a Zero Trust environment. Okay, so in one of his presentations, John identified, using an analogy, the power of actually that network visibility. And it refers to an individual that some of you may know called Edward Snowden, who was a trusted, authenticated, approved and authorized representative of the NSA. One of the things they never did, that they could never do, and they weren't able to do at the time, is look at his packets, to look at his traffic, to look at what he was doing in the organization by using deep observability. And had they done that using solutions like Gigamon, the outcome would have been completely different. So, which is why we believe that packets and traffic, the enrichment of that data, allied with observability tools across the whole environment, is absolutely compelling in terms of helping you secure your environments. And I think, as some of you that were in the room yesterday and heard Shane Buckley, our global CEO, communicate, we are used in some of the largest, most complex, secure and sensitive organizations globally. In fact, thanks to sponsorship from Dr. Sharif, we're also been grateful enough to play part of the Egyptian CERT initiative, which he so eloquently presented earlier on. So really reassuring in terms of the value that we create. And also, in terms of some of those top mobile operators, some of the network speed, some of the bandwidth, some of the data volumes that those organizations are generating are absolutely colossal compared to what you typically find in an enterprise environment. So, in summary, we believe deep observability should be an absolutely essential component of your hybrid cloud solution. We think it creates not only a stable platform on which you can build a Zero Trust architecture when that requirement comes, but also it's a key player in enabling your organization to continue to run fast, to innovate at pace, to stay secure, and to do that in as far as you can, cost effectively, and help you succeed in that digital transformation. For those of you that want to get a more detailed insight on Gigamon and some of our capabilities as they relate to use cases, particularly around building a next generation security operations center, I'd just like to draw your attention to a session which is in the Red Room this afternoon with Frank Goodman, who's our worldwide CTO. He'll be talking eloquently about the power of our solution, enabling security use cases and helping increase the efficiency and effectiveness of the modern SOC. And so, in closing, I'd like to thank you for your time. And I hope each and every one of you have a productive and enjoyable session. And I will be around for the next couple of days if there are questions that you need to ask. Shukran.